What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another video. In this video today I want to give you 5 tips for getting started in stock footage, coming right up. So first things first, let's talk about cameras. If you're coming into stock footage now, I really suggest that you go straight into a 4K camera. There are a number of reasons for this, but primarily, guys, at the end of the day, HD has got a limited shelf life remaining. If you think back sort of maybe 10, 20 years ago now, SD was more the standard, and we no longer see any of that really on the agencies unless it's archival content. People are sort of saying that it's got like 4 or 5 years left, but 4K is going to become the norm really soon. As we're in stock footage for the long tail revenue prospects, we really want to go to 4K to try and future-proof our earnings as much as possible. When I first started in stock footage, all I could manage was a 600D, but cameras have come a very long way since then. People weren't even really actually thinking about 4K outside of blockbuster films at that point. However, now I actually shoot only on 4K cameras. The first 4K camera I got was actually the GH4 before I upgraded to the GH5, which I'm on right now. I also use a number of products by DJI, primarily the Osmo and also the DJI Inspire drone. All of those shoot 4K, and that's really what I'm after when it comes to stock footage. I also recently acquired the Samsung S8 mobile phone, which also shoots 4K footage, and I've been very impressed with the content that that's actually producing. If you're stuck budget-wise, I definitely recommend looking into upgrading your phone, and I'll also leave a couple of resource links in the description below. Now, coming in at number 2, guys, I really recommend that you get yourself some basic kit at a minimum. I can't recommend a good tripod enough. I really recommend getting something that can produce silky smooth footage. It's going to help you produce really great looking content compared to, say, a really cheap sort of jittery tripod that can't really get that nice smooth motion down to a fine point. If you have a little bit of a budget lying around and you're looking to go further than a tripod, I recommend that you actually look at getting yourself a slider next. They really up the production quality that you can produce while keeping your costs low. If you're looking to more high-end stuff, then perhaps you could get a drone or, a motorized gimbal, for example, or a glide cam, etc. So you can actually produce, finer shots like dollies and all the rest of them. But I recommend a tripod to begin with, guys. And if you can, progress to a slider. At the end of the day, the client is looking for the biggest bang for their buck, and if they can get some nice smooth shots with motion in them, they're much more likely to go for those kind of shots compared to, say, a still shot unless it fits into a certain sequence. Now, moving on quickly to number 3, guys, and that's kind of a really bit of a tricky one to sort of explain with this, but basically, guys, avoid the urge to just run out and shoot rubbish, for lack of a better word. Basically, guys, a lot of people, when they first come into this industry, they go out, they'll grab their cameras and they'll be like, oh, right, great, let's go shoot some stock footage, and they'll just go out and film anything. And none of this kind of content really has any commercial value to it. It's a saturated thing. And I've kind of got this rule of thumb that I've mentioned before, but basically, guys, if anybody else in the world can sort of shoot this content, it's probably been done, it's probably not worth shooting, and you're probably wasting your time. Something that you can do really quickly before you actually come up with something that you want to shoot is actually go on to the agencies, do a search term on what you're actually looking to shoot, and take a look at what's already out there. If it's a saturated niche, for example, if you go and search ducks on Pond5 or Shutterstock, you're going to see an absolute armada of content, and the chances are not only is that thing a flooded niche, but the buyers aren't really there either for that kind of content matter. There's only so many shows about ducks that really actually need that kind of content. So really just sort of apply yourself a little bit in that regard. Do a double check on the agencies and just try to sort of think before you go out there and capture content. I don't want to put anybody off by saying that. I'm just trying to give some helpful advice, because I'd hate to see somebody come into this industry, a novice who comes in and he's like, oh, right, great, yeah, I want to make some money. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go and shoot 200 shots of grass, and it never sells and they get put off, and then they never come back to it. So guys, I really just please do a double check on the content that you're going to film. Double check it on the agencies. It's a really useful tool to actually see what else is already out there. And you can take a look at the competition as well. See what's already been done. Can you do it better? There's a lot of useful information by looking at what other people have already actually shot. So coming in at number 4, guys, we've actually got a much more subjective tip here. It's not a concrete one. And this is very much down to the individual person. But when it comes to your footage, guys, don't oversaturate it, don't overgrade it. You want to kind of like keep it a little bit graded, but not to the point where it's unusable for anybody else to then go in and alter it to their own pipelines. A lot of people when they shoot stock footage, they don't even actually grade it or even cut it up sometimes. Sometimes you get people who will just upload it straight out of camera as it is, take it or leave it, and you know they just do that without any post involved. The way that I recommend going about doing it is that you actually do use an editor, you cut it up, and then you do a little bit of a grade. So I like to film in quite a flat profile and then grade it afterwards because it gives me more control in post-production. What I like to do though is actually just boost the contrast and the saturation a little bit, maybe adjust the shadows and highlights, and then I'm done. I don't want to actually produce a finished product because then that's all it's going to ever be. You know, if you go ahead and bake in the colors, etc., and then throw it up on the agencies, it's really only going to sell to the people who are actually happy to use it as is. Most buyers want something that they can actually alter in their own pipelines to sync up to the rest of their footage for the finished product. So I recommend you do a little bit of a grade. You know, there's no, you know, rock hard science to that. But again, it's up to you at the end of the day, what you think looks best, etc. And the other thing is as well with this, you want it, the reason that we grade it a little bit and make it pop only a little bit is because we want it to stand out on the agencies. If we didn't do any grading at all, chances are it would be accepted, but then it would also be quite hard for buyers to actually find it in amongst all of the other content. You stand a much better chance of getting a sale if, you know, when you're scrolling through the pages and pages on the libraries, your footage actually pops out and says, oh, look at me. You know, I've got a nice color going on, I look quite attractive visually to the eye, so I'm going to click on that as the buyer, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, this looks like a good shot, it looks like I can play around with it as well in my pipeline, so I'm going to pull this one down, I'm going to buy this shot, and then I'm going to use it in my own project. Whereas if you'd actually produce a finished product, a buyer could look at that and say, well, you know, it's a good shot, but I can't actually really use this because it's too heavily baked and I'm just gonna have to skip this and I'll go and get this one instead. So guys, again, it is really subjective with that tip, but I do recommend you do a little bit of grading, but don't overkill it. Now, lastly, guys, the last tip that I really want to give you here is to do with keywording. I'm actually going to do an entire video on this because I could go on forever about metadata, but when it comes to keywords, guys, a lot of people when they first come into this industry, they only do a little bit of keywording, the bare minimum. And the rule of thumb is, guys, that you want to try and do as many keywords as you possibly can. I like to aim for around 40 when I do my keywording, and that's just because obviously the more keywords, the more exposure you've got to different search terms. If you've only got, say, 8 keywords or 10 keywords, there's only actually so many search terms that your footage can actually fit into. So, you know, you might have a shot of a number of different animals all in one shot, and you might use one word to describe each of those animals, but at the end of the day, you know, you've left out what they're actually doing in the shot, you've left out where they are in the shot. If you're shooting at night is a really good example as well. You should have that keyword in there for like night, evening, sunset perhaps. All of these kind of extra keywords really do help to actually sort of set the scene in a metadata sense. And that's really important when it comes to your content. A lot of people don't do that, but they should, because at the end of the day, we want to maximize our potential exposure to buyers. And I do really thoroughly recommend you do that. I'm going to actually, like I said, I'm going to actually do an entire video around that to do with the whole sort of technical and conceptual keywording. But I'm going to save that for another video because I could spend quite a lot of time talking about that. But again, guys, that's really what that tip comes down to, is just to increase your keywords there, get some good keyword-rich titles as well, and you can really go far with your content. So anyway, guys, that just about wraps it up for this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I just wanted to sort of share all these tips to anybody who's really new to this industry and sort of wants to get a better understanding. Like I said earlier, I'm going to leave some links in the description of this video to just some extra resources and stuff if perhaps you're interested in reading up on a few other factors as well. There's a link to my website there as well if anyone is interested in working with me. Thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate the support that this channel's had. It's so awesome making these videos and sharing my knowledge with people. Do really enjoy doing that. And until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video.